one meeting. Yours is far more depth.
To start with, we'll have the invocation by Commissioner Ricky Jones and the pledge by Commissioner Chad Story. Everyone, please stand.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you have given us, and we thank you for this opportunity to sit as commissioners and represent the people of Williamson County. We ask that you be with all those that serve our community, especially those that are the police officers and firemen. And we also ask that you be with those that are serving us and protecting our liberties overseas. And be with us through the rest of this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. I've got mine. Go. Next, we'll have roll call. If you're present, please press your yes button. All right, I got everybody now. Call the roll, please.
We have 20 present, 4 absent. Commissioner Chalfant, Commissioner Hester, Commissioner Lathers, and Commissioner Nations absent.
Commissioners Lathers and Hesters are on trips. Commissioner Nations is on her way back from a trip that didn't think she was going to get here in time, and I haven't heard from Commissioner Chalfant. So. Next, we have approval of the minutes. These were emailed to you. This time, we will entertain a motion. Commissioner Smith, the motion. Commissioner Osbrooks, the second. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, if you're in favor of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are passed. Next, we have communications, citizens' communications. We have 7, so that we still have 3 minutes apiece. If you would, when you come to the microphone, state your name and your address for the record, and we will each have, by our rules, you will have 3 minutes to speak. First on the list is Kathy Danner.
513 Brennan Lane, Franklin. I'm here tonight as a former county commissioner and as a realtor. I wanted to weigh in on your vote to increase the education impact fee. As a former Williamson County commissioner who voted to create this legal school funding tool, I support you in doing what you need to do in order to keep it healthy and moving forward. I supported the vision of its creator, former County Commissioner Todd Kessner. He represented people, I represented people, and you currently represent people who overwhelmingly then and now want to put the burden of new growth on new growth. As you know, this money does not go into the general coffers of the county. It goes directly to the capital cost of schools. The two main reasons people move here are low property taxes and schools, and this financial tool supports both. Please know that just because an organization doesn't support it, not all realtors agree with that stance. As a matter of fact, the last time I checked, a realtor's income is directly tied to the sales amount of that property. So when the builders pass the cost on to the end consumer, no different than the adequate schools and facilities tax, the price of the house goes up, as does everyone's property value. Therefore, my income goes up on the sale of each house while simultaneously investing in the school system. As a matter of fact, every time a realtor closes on a house in Williamson County, they should write the commissioners a thank you note. The argument that it's not sustainable funding is correct. It was never meant to be, just like the adequate schools and facilities tax. It is meant to fill the gap that the BEP formula does not, and only when that money is available. Thank you. I hope you vote yes.
Next is Victor Andrews.
Yes, Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity. I would like to oppose that education, and I will tell you why. Maybe a lot of reasons, but I would like to say that attainable housing is something I'm very familiar with. By the way, I'm 207 Battle Avenue. Sorry about that. Victor Andrews. But affordable housing is something we mentioned quite a bit. I think affordable housing may not be the right word. Attainable housing to me is a better word. Your affordability may not be mine and vice versa, but I would like to say that this will be a negative impact on the ability of the market to provide any housing at any level. A $10,000 average increase in the property tax in this impact fee overnight is going to impact both existing home sales for sure. Obviously, the people that pay will be the new home buyers. But I would just like to say I oppose it for several reasons. The main reason is because of the attainable housing prices that will impact. Thank you for your time.
Jordan Vaughn.
My name is Jordan Vaughn. I live at 801 Caledonian Court, Franklin, Tennessee. My name is Jordan, and I'm the president-elect for the Williamson County Association of Realtors. After speaking with members, a former commissioner, and clients that live within Williamson County, I'm here to ask you to vote no for the increase in the educational impact fee, or at the very minimum, ask that you to defer this and vote not right now. All of us in this room would agree that schools are the #1 driving force behind the growth that this county has experienced, and all of us would agree that the BEP is unfavorable to this county and all that it gives toward those BEP funds. What we want is a conversation and collaboration on how to bring those revenues through a more broad-based fee and tax, a fee that is not directed at a select group of homeowners and that is revenue not brought in on the backs of new construction costs that are already at record high. Earlier today, we spoke with a former commissioner that made the statement that this fee was designed to allow the burden of new growth to be on new growth. The reality is many of these new construction clients are coming from within Williamson County already. They're already invested in this county through various fees and taxes. In fact, right now I have a client that is looking to move into a larger home that they've outgrown and need a new home. The difference between this $10,000 and $15,000 fee is a burden this family just can't bear. They want to stay in the county that they brought their children home to and that they themselves work in. contrary to the earlier statement that we can make more commission is not really the complete picture. The reality is we're here on behalf of our homeowners and property right owners. If they can't afford to buy here, we don't make any commission. WCAR supported a broad-based tax increase earlier this year, and we did not speak out against the commissioner's 7-cent property tax increase. All we're asking is for further conversation, further input, and other resources and other conversations on how to figure out how to create broader-based taxes and fees. Thank you.
David Logan.
Good evening. I'm David Logan, 1016 West Main Street. I've been a registered voter in Williamson County for 43 years. And it's been a great place to live and raise your family and to also have a business. And I thank each one of you for the job you do to keep this thing rolling. You know, a lot of blame is being put on builders today for the growth. And it's not the builders that are creating the growth. It's jobs. It's good management by government like you. It's schools. That's what's creating the growth. Builders are merely providing a product for the people that are being drawn in here already. And we're not thinking about taxing Publix or Kroger for supplying food to all these people, and we're not blaming them for the growth. The builders are just providing a service and a product for people that are already being drawn in here by jobs and schools. And so we are for a broad-based support of our county, not just focused on one industry or even just a little section of an industry. Right now, we have about 3,000 homes a year, permits being pulled, and so we're putting this burden that should be spread over 200,000 people on about 3,000. And so we just would like to see a much broader support of our county through broad-based taxes like a wheel tax, like property taxes, and not just specific impacts. Also, 3 years ago, you were led to believe that we were going to have 2,500 new students a year coming into our county, and that we needed to buckle up and get this impact fee through so we can build these schools. Well, the truth is, in the last 3 years, we've not had 2,500 students. We've had 1,200. So if I miss projections by 50% in my business, I've made a big mistake. And if I multiply that over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, just think how much money we're planning to raise for something that's not going to be here. As a matter of fact, the new projections being put out by BICE is 1,700 students per year, a drop of 800. Now, what happened in these last 3 years that's losing us 800 students? And that 1,700 is still 500 more students per year than we're actually bringing in right now. So I'd say it's time to slow this thing down and take a good look at it and not just run it through tonight. And I would ask you to do that because we're against that. Thank you.
Todd Kestner.
Good evening. It's good to be back. Todd Kestner, 3210 Del Rio Pike, Franklin. It's good to see y'all. I'm here to speak about the proposed increase in the impact fee. And I have to say that the statement of opposition from the Williamson County Association of Realtors presents not one single fact to support their views. The impact fee has certainly not slowed growth. Raise your hand if you think growth has slowed. I don't know anybody who thinks that in the county. Surely you understand that because we live in a free market, the impact fee immediately increased the value of all existing houses in the county. So the commission increased the value of every existing home. How many times do you get to do that? That's pretty rare. I think it's pretty cool. If the average impact fee has been $10,000, then the impact fee increased the average value by $10,000. And as Kathy said, the average realtor gets to collect and keep about $150 more for every sale they make. They ought to be sending you thank you notes by the bushel load. The impact fee has increased the income of realtors and will continue to do so. It seems to me, in looking at your numbers, the cost of new school construction has increased about 30% from 3 years ago, 4 years ago when we talked about this. This increase is far less than that. New residential development does not cover the cost of the burden it creates. You've heard me say that a lot. That's true even after you collect this impact fee. If you did, you wouldn't have to be authorizing another $140 million of debt tonight that I think is on your agenda. So the developers who say it creates all this, where's all this money we're supposed to be rolling around in? I've never been able to find it. The WCAR claims that the impact fee is not sustainable. That's proven to be completely wrong. The number of housing permits has gone up. It's not gone down. If you want to stop having to raise debt levels to build new schools, stop building new houses. I don't advocate that. I do advocate a user fee that makes sense and applies the cost where the cost is created, where the burden's created. Here's a really great question. What other tax do you pay that you get to keep? In other words, what other tax do you pay as an individual that you get to get back? If I buy a new home here and it costs an extra 10 grand and then I go sell it later, I get that extra 10 grand back. I don't know any other taxes that do that. All the Association of Realtors has done tonight with their opposition is prove that they either just carry the water for home builders or they don't understand basic economics. Thank you.
Laura Turner.
Laura Turner, 1108 Dickinson Lane. Good evening. I'm representing Citizens for Old Natchez Trace, but also I think these are sentiments of many citizens throughout the county. Many concerned citizens attended the meeting October 1st at Franklin High School Library regarding the comprehensive land use plan. County planners and their experts told us we are at a crossroads. We must decide on how we want the county to develop in the future. What quality of life do we want for our children? What historic resources do we want to protect for future generations? I liken our dilemma to being on the Titanic. It was a beautiful, expensive ship, but greed kept lifeboats to a minimum, and ego prevented iceberg warnings from being taken seriously. If they had only listened to the warnings. I do know a few simple truths about the mega growth consuming our county. 1, growth does not pay for itself. Taxpayers pay for it. 2, county property taxes were recently raised to pay for the growth. 3, the county debt is over $568 million, yet Williamson County is the 7th richest county in the United States. 4, historic, scenic, and culturally significant resources are being destroyed. 5, traffic is abominable and getting worse. 6, our town and country lifestyle fuels the economic development engine of the county. When the country part of the county is gone, this engine will choke and stall. 7, we need rural preservation, not density devastation. We are looking to you, our county commissioners, to do the right thing and support the recommendations of our county planners and their experts. And when the time comes, vote for the town and country growth scenario with 1 unit per 5 acres in the unincorporated parts of the county. In 2001, Scenic America named the Harpeth River Valley as one of the top 10 last chance landscapes in the United States. Almost 20 years later, the truth is, this is our last chance to save what we love and treasure in this amazing county. Thank you.
Mark Mize.
Thanks for letting me talk to you guys this evening. Mark Mize, 1233 Ascot Lane. I am here representing the Red Wing Meadows Homeowners Association. I've been in the neighborhood for approximately 8 years now. A couple years before I moved into the neighborhood, a sewer line was installed through our common ground to service future development now known as Berry Farms. I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about the downstream effects of allowing the city to install infrastructure through county properties to the detriment of county residents. Specifically for my home, if my $300 septic pump is to go out, I will not be granted a permit to replace that $300 pump. Instead, I will be required to spend $5,300 on a tap fee to tap to that sewer line, plus costs of imploding or infilling my septic tank and the construction cost of actually constructing a sewer line, plus the in perpetuity cost of sewage fees, which are probably about $1,200 a month based on how much water we use. So that's a downstream effect that I'm not sure is used in when the county is allowing the city to install infrastructure. A new one that we just discovered is that there's a reclaimed water line as a part of, along with that sewer line that is now being expanded. We weren't even told about it. We're the only established homeowners association. We have an active lawsuit against the city of Franklin because they didn't fulfill their promise in returning our common ground to its previous state. And they just started work on installing a new 12-inch reclaimed water line to service further development south of us. We're in a little bit of an interesting area where we're surrounded on three sides by annexed city, and it's only going to get worse. So I'm not, from what I've been told by specifically just Betsy Hester, who's my commissioner in my district, there's not really much that you guys can do about it, which I find is a little strange since we are a county and the city has to install their infrastructure through the county. So I'm not really sure what you guys can do about it, but I would like you to consider before doing things like requesting a sewer line extension through Ellington Park to service the new middle school on Henpeck Lane. The downstream effects of that to all residents within the vicinity of that sewer line are going to be at least $1,000 a month in sewage fees in perpetuity, plus approximately $9,000 in construction costs and tap fees. These are essentially taxes on us that benefit only city growth. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have communications and messages. This time, if we haven't already, would ask that you turn your cell phones off. Also, I'd like to thank the Sheriff's Office for providing our security tonight. One other message is, remember, our next meeting in November, because of Veterans Day, will be on Tuesday, Tuesday the 12th, instead of Monday the 11th. I think that's all the communications and messages I have. So next we'll have, did I miss something? Yes, thank you. I did. But also at this time would like to ask if there's any objections. We've been asked to move Resolution 1019-1, which is the first resolution under Other. Move it up first. That's the impact fee resolution. Are there any objections to moving that up to the front of the agenda? Seeing none, we will move it up. Thank you. Next, we have reports of county officers. Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, I'll have Nina come up. As she is making her way up to kind of give a snapshot of the county for the last 30 days, we will also have a couple of presentations tonight. So after she finishes, I would like to introduce to you a gentleman, Matthew Latham from the Marriott. Once a quarter, they're going to come forward and kind of give an overview of the quarterly processes that go on at the Marriott and with us. As you know, we own half of it. Nina?
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. This evening in your packets, we do have our August monthly report for the Cool Springs Marriott. For the month of August, we did have a profit of $49,885. Also in your packet this evening is the education impact fee report. Total collections to date is $42.1 million. $6.6 million of that was used on projects in the previous year. That leaves $35.5 million. There were net collections. $12.5 million of that was paid under protest. This evening, we do have two bond resolutions that are coming up. There's $13.4 million of the education impact fee that is being included in each of those bonds as a total to offset the borrowing cost. Also, this evening in your packet is the August privilege tax collections of $1.4 million. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Yes. Commissioner Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nina, I just had one question. Where are we as of to this date on a total county debt?
Total direct debt is $738,600,000. Net direct debt is $659,695,000.
Okay. So tonight, we're going to vote on approximately 140 million, a little more than that tonight. So is it safe to say by the year end, we'll have over 800 million, will be 870 million in total debt? Would that be a?
Approximately.
Okay.
We will have some payments around $60 million this year, and we'll also be using some of the sales tax monies to defease some of the debt.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nina.
Mm-hmm.
In your packet, as the Marriott representative's coming up, the general manager, Matthew Leff, is coming up. In your packet, you've got a single sheet that reads Cool Springs Conference Center. This carries you out from 1999 through 2000. You'll see the first 2 months of July and August, the earnings picture, and Matthew is here to talk to you a little bit about the last quarter.
Thank you. Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me. As Mayor said, my name is Matt Leff. I'm the general manager at the Marriott and the Cool Springs Conference Center. Just a quick outline, I want to talk about how we finished the 2018-19 fiscal year, and then where we're at on Q1, and I just have the results as of about 30 minutes ago for September, and I'll give you a rough idea on that, and then the market trends, and then property improvement for the Cool Springs Conference Center. So for the financial summary, 2018-19, we finished with total revenue of $7.8 million to a budget of about $7.7 million. And then the net operating income prior to the 5% reserves for capital funding finished with $1,002,000 or 12.74% profit to a budget of $828,000 or 10.76%. For the Q1 fiscal year 19-20, we are at $1.8 million roughly in total operational revenue with a net operating income of $209,000. And again, that's before the 5% reserves. At September, I just got the figures. We finished with a net operating income after reserve of $137,000. So the check to the county will be $68,500 for this month, or for September, and $68,500 to the city of Franklin. As far as market trends are concerned, as everybody here knows, Chartwell Hospitality took this hotel over and the conference center over on November 1st of 2018, and so we've gone through a full year. We've done 431 group conventions, 408 social and local events totaling 61,204 attendees that walked through the doors of the conference center. What we've seen a lot of increase over the last 3 years is the conference center just can't hold everything that we would like to do, either because of space, size of functions, or we've already got things on the books and we can't book anymore. Over the last 3 years, we've seen an increase. For 2017, we had 76 events that were turned down. In 2018, we had 106 events that were turned down. And in 2019, year to date, we've already turned down 276 events. The majority of those would be associations that we're losing to downtown properties, and we're losing a lot to Murfreesboro for the larger conventions, to the Embassy Suites. So we would like more space, but we don't have that right now. A couple of the required property improvements when the property was sold, Marriott requires a property improvement plan. Some of those were life safety. Those have all been completed. The other ones, the bigger ones, there's a renovation of the public restrooms in the conference center. We've earmarked about $100,000 for that. We may be able to value engineer that a little bit. We're going to replace banquet meeting room doors and install RFID locking systems for better security for our guests. And we're going to change to LED lighting in the meeting rooms and in the parking lot. There should be a pretty quick ROI on that. The total project is going to be, we're guesstimating about $80,000 based on some of the estimates that we've gotten. But, you know, we feel like there'd be about a 2-year turnaround on that investment. And then we're also refreshing the landscaping or the sense of arrival at the hotel. There's landscaping and hardscaping. Obviously, Chartwell's picking up the piece of that for the hotel, and then the conference center piece will be paid for through the capital funding that we have in reserve. And then further down the road, we need to start thinking about a few more things, replacing and repairing the movable partitions between the meeting rooms. They're 20 years old. They don't last forever, so they need to be refurbished or they need to be replaced. It could be anywhere from $200,000 for a complete refurbishment to $460,000 for a replacement. We need to replace some kitchen equipment that has passed its useful life, and we also need to look at the replacement of the chillers. There's 2 chillers in the hotel, and the cooling tower needs to be have a refurbishment of the interior, the guts of it. So those are a few of the big items. As far as our trends for next year, the hotel we work on a calendar year, so we mix it up with the fiscal year with the city and county. But looking at 2020 right now, we are pacing revenue $452,000 above where we were at this time last year. And then we have tentative revenue in the books of $276,000 to add to that. Tentative revenue means that we've been asked for contracts. Those contracts are out. We're waiting for those to come back. And then we have prospect revenue of $246,000 where we haven't set contracts out yet. We're trying to get that business, whether it's from Murfreesboro or downtown or wherever it might come from. So, and I think that pretty much concludes what I have. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer?
Don't see any.
We had a good month.
Yes, sir. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So we have 2 presentations tonight. I would like very much to ask Mike Matson to come up. Many of you know him in Joe Horn's area. Over the last several months, we have been embarking on the comprehensive land plan. Those meetings have been occurring throughout our county. We've had very good attendance in those, looking at the future of how we want Williamson County to look for the next 10 to 15 years. In 2006, 7, and 8, we did this, and now some 13 years later, we're following up with that, listening to what the citizens are saying, listening to you, and looking at our rural landscape. That's a word that has become more and more pronounced as we travel around to try to save and preserve as much of the rural landscape as we possibly can. So Mike has passed out to you what he's going to cover tonight. We do not have a presentation on the board for the rest of the audience to see because we hurriedly put this together. I asked Mike to get this to you because before the end of the year, first part of the year, we're going to be asking for your votes and some consideration on some of those. So Mike, the show's yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Anderson, and good evening, commissioners. The first thing I'd like to do is to make you aware of and invite you to attend a joint County Commission, Planning Commission workshop that's going to be held on October 30th in a couple of weeks. That'll be at 6 p.m. at the Enrichment Center. So I hope to see a lot of you there. We feel like this is a very important stage of this very important project, and so we're hoping that there will be a good turnout for that joint workshop. So in terms of my update, I thought I would start by kind of walking you through and reminding you of some of the history that has led us to this point, starting with our current comprehensive plan, which, as Mayor Anderson said, was adopted in 2007. That plan was a product of a very significant and extensive public input process that involved multiple meetings throughout the community. During those meetings, we heard loud and clear from the community, and probably the number one theme that was expressed at those meetings was the desire to preserve rural character in the outlying areas of the county and to focus the lion's share of the growth in and around the cities, the urban growth boundaries. So that was the key theme and really a predominant theme that got carried over into the plan. And at one point during the plan's development, we were kicking around different ideas for implementing that policy. And one of the ideas that was proposed at that time was to actually reduce the allowable density in some of those rural areas as a way to implement that plan. And that idea actually made its way into some of the preliminary recommendations of the plan. However, late in that process, a number of large property owners expressed a concern about that idea and about the impact that they felt it would have on property values. And so late in the process, a decision was made not to reduce those fundamental residential densities that had been in place for many years. And so that has, along with some other things, really kind of handcuffed the county in terms of implementing that policy of preserving rural character. So since the time that the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2007, as you know, the county has been experiencing really unprecedented levels of growth. And most of that growth in the unincorporated county has actually been settling into those rural areas of the county rather than in the urban growth boundaries. And there are a number of reasons for that. Strong development demand, favorable zoning in those rural areas currently, and a lot of available land all lead to that. And so what we've seen is actually that a lot of the development has kind of jumped over those urban growth boundaries and located in rural areas, which is really kind of the opposite of the policy that was expressed in the plan. So as a result of that, we've seen kind of a chipping away of rural character, and we've also seen an increase in traffic congestion, and traffic issues have become increasingly of concern to citizens. And as a result of the concern regarding traffic issues, you may remember in 2017, the county did what we refer to as a comprehensive traffic strategy that is a document that begins to put together the framework for putting the proper systems in place in order to deal with traffic issues in the most effective way possible. That strategy included a number of recommendations, but one of those recommendations was to update the county's comprehensive land use plan with a particular focus on looking at those residential densities that are allowed. So that brings us up to today. As Mayor Anderson said, we're in the process of working through these issues in order to update the county's comprehensive land use plan. And we're working with a consultant team that is kind of multidisciplinary. The lead consultant is McBride Dale Clarion. They're a land use consultant, but we also have some sub-consultants, KCI Technologies looking at traffic and roadway issues, and Tischler Bice looking at overall fiscal impacts. And we feel like that interdisciplinary approach will help to allow the county to make the most informed decisions possible about the future. One of the observations that the consultant team had very early on, which I think is very true, is that Williamson County right now is really in a fork in the road moment from a policy standpoint. And the comprehensive plan will do a lot of things and touch on a lot of subjects. But the fundamental question that the comp plan will attempt to answer is, does the county still believe that preserving rural character by focusing the majority of growth in and around the cities is the appropriate policy to have, or does the county conclude and concede that a continuation of suburban-style development sprawling into the rural areas is appropriate, and those former policies, the current policies, are no longer appropriate. We have had a great deal of public comment thus far in the process. We've had 2 very well-attended public meetings. We've also had online opportunities for people to engage. And thus far, we've heard very clearly and very strongly that citizens do still very much value the rural character and want to preserve that. In fact, I would say that that opinion has been voiced even more strongly this time than it was back in 2006, 2007. When the consultant, the lead consultant, was here back in June to update you all, he mentioned that the next step was to develop a couple of growth scenarios for the community and the county to evaluate. One of those growth scenarios is referred to as just kind of a business as usual scenario. What would happen if the county's current policies and current zoning and the current trends were just projected forward in the future? What would that look like? The other one they refer to as a town and country scenario, where the areas outside the urban growth boundaries that are currently zoned 1 unit per acre would be zoned 1 unit per 5 acres. And then in the urban growth boundaries, those would be encouraged to develop in conjunction with the cities and pursuant to their plans for development and their prevailing densities. So those are 2 scenarios that were developed, and the consultants team has spent a great deal of time and effort evaluating those 2 basic scenarios. They've looked at those from the standpoint of quality of life and community character. They've looked at those from the standpoint of traffic needs and what roadway improvement projects would be needed based on those different scenarios. And then they've also looked at overall fiscal impacts associated with those scenarios. I won't go into a lot of those details. The consultant team will all be present at that workshop on the 30th, and they'll do a very deep dive into these issues. But I will say that during that the result of the analysis was that town and country scenario fared much better in all 3 of those criteria. We did hold a public meeting recently where those scenarios were presented to the community, and at that meeting the community overwhelmingly indicated their preference for the town and country scenario. We also met the next morning with the Citizens Advisory Committee, which does include several members of the County Commission. Commissioners Lawrence, Lothers, and Williams are on that committee. And that's a broad committee consisting of elected officials, appointed officials, and various stakeholder groups, including the development community, environmental groups, neighborhood groups, et cetera. And the consensus of that committee was also to pursue the town and country scenario. So these issues will be discussed at the workshop on the 30th. Again, the consultant team will go through this information in a lot greater detail. And then once we receive some additional guidance from you all and from the Planning Commission, the actual drafting of the plan will take place. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Lawrence.
Mike, first of all, good evening, Mike. Thanks for, I just want to thank you for all of the hard work you put in on this plan, and we've had a lot of meetings, and it's taken, it seems like a long time to get to this point, but I think we've got a really good plan now, and based off what we've heard from the last 2 public meetings, I believe we have overwhelming public support for the plan that we've approved. So once we get past this next meeting, and I know you're saying that we need to draft it up, when will it be ready to be voted on by the commission or the planning? Would the planning commission vote on this as well, or?
Planning commission will vote on it, and they're required to adopt the plan. We anticipate getting the plan wrapped up, and then before planning commission and county commission early in the next year, January, February timeframe.
Okay. And once we vote on it, will it be immediately implemented?
So that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. So the plan itself, once it's formally adopted by the county, becomes the official policy, but it doesn't change zoning. It just establishes the policy. So if the comprehensive plan update does recommend changes in zoning, that's a separate process that would take place.
Okay, so if we had to change, which it does, it's going to recommend a lot of changes in zoning. So how long would that process take after the land use plan is adopted?
Yeah, it's hard to say. You know, we did this back in 2007, and the zoning ordinance that was then changed to implement the plan did take some time, but it's a different situation now in that zoning ordinance really needed to be completely rewritten because of its age. We don't feel that way with this zoning ordinance, and we have zoning districts already on the books that could help implement, some of the changes that have been discussed. So I don't see that as needing to take a terribly long time.
Okay, and will those zoning changes come through this board or just the planning commission or both?
No, so those will be ultimately voted upon by the county commission.
Okay. All right. That answers my questions. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
So again, if you would, mark on your calendar, because we don't get back together again on October 30th. And for those in the audience or watching on television, we encourage you to come on down to the Enrichment Center and learn as much as you can about this. All right, our next presentation, Mr. Chairman, is in regard to the resolution, the educational impact fee. Carson is going to make his way up here. We will have that presentation, allow time for you all to ask questions, and then, see you all here? He did get here. He was running late. That's why I'm kind of looking. And so we'll have the presentation on the educational impact fee. There'll be time for questions, and then you got a few other committees to go through. Then we'll have that resolution up for a vote. Carson, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let's see here.
Not touchscreen? Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Ashton will set it up there. And we need to turn the other two on.
I can do it from there. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Carson Bice with Tischler Bice. It's good to be here again in front of you. I'm going to walk you through the impact fee presentation. Okay. Okay. Want me to wait? Okay. Okay. Again, Carson Bice with Tischler Bice out of Bethesda, Maryland. And like I said, it's good to be in front of you again. For those of you who may be new to the commission, our firm specializes in impact fees. We've done more impact fees and, in fact, more education impact fees than any firm in the country. We also do a lot of fiscal and economic impact analysis and other infrastructure financing strategies. Let's talk a little bit about impact fees in general. First of all, they are one-time payments, and they're designed to offset new developments, capital facility demands against that infrastructure category. We just can't take impact fees and deposit them into the county's general fund. We do have some rules about accounting and publishing annual reports, et cetera. With impact fees, we do have to satisfy a legal test. And essentially, there's three prongs to that. One is we have to show nexus or the need. So the impact fee study has to document that growth has occurred, that growth is going to continue in the future, and that growth is going to generate the need for additional growth-related facilities. We also have to show benefit, and we show that two ways. Once is through sort of a geographic analysis of whether we need to establish service areas or not, and the second is through the timing of expenditures, meaning that we simply don't collect the education impact fee and not spend it for a period of 10 or 15 or 20 years. We have to spend the money in a timely fashion to benefit the fee payer itself. And then finally, we have to show proportionality, which is why the fees are differentiated by size of house in the case of Williamson County, or by type of unit, single family versus multifamily, because housing units have different indicators of demand in terms of people generation rates by size of house. We also have to take into consideration credits. So the idea here is that the fee payer pays once through the impact fee and then again through a future stream of revenue, and in this case, the Williamson County privilege taxes. And so there's a credit built into the methodology for that. As you may remember from the last go-round, we essentially have two impact fees. One is covers K through 8 or elementary and middle schools, and the other is 9 through 12, which covers the high schools. We also have two boundaries. One is there's a county-wide fee for that pays both the K through 8 and the 9 through 12, and that covers the part of the county outside of the Franklin Special School District. And development within the Franklin Special School District pays only the high school fee, or the 9 through 12 fee, because the Franklin Special School District provides their own K through 8 schools. This chart here shows the enrollment projections. Someone did point out earlier that the projections from 3 years ago the current projections aren't as high as the projections from 3 years ago, and that's a fairly common occurrence with impact fees or any projections that you make. And these projections are from the school district, and you can see that the district is growing substantially. And it's important to note that the enrollment projections do not influence the amount of the fee based on the methodology employed in the calculation. So if we're optimistic or we've been pessimistic in our projections, it doesn't change the amount that the fee should be in terms of the calculations. And over the next 4 years, the projection is approximately 7,200 additional school students. And I would also point out that that's one of the reasons why the commission elected 3 years ago to put in the provision within the ordinance that you do relook at the fees every 3 years, because it is important that the fee not be static and sort of a snapshot in time. It needs to be updated fairly frequently, not only to capture demographic trends, but also changes in funding arrangements, changes in the cost of land, changes in the cost of construction. We also have to, as part of this analysis, as I mentioned earlier, look at the demographics, and this slide here is part of our demographic analysis, where we make the link between size of house and the number of school-age public school students from the public use microsample data published by the U.S. Census Bureau. And as you can see here at the K through 8 level, and you also see here in the 9 through 12 level, that as the size of house increases, so do the number of people and the number of school-age children. And I might add that the student generation rates are slightly lower this time around than they were 3 years ago. The next few slides you're going to see are the levels of service analysis conducted as part of our analysis. And I apologize, these are tables with a lot of data, and so it's slightly hard to read. In fact, given my age, I can't even read these slides to the bottom. But the real takeaway here is that we look at each school type in terms of how many square feet are you providing, how many acres do you have, what are the levels of service relative to capacity or enrollment. And since the school system is presently under 100%, we use the 100% capacity in order to gauge the level of service standards, because that's what you've built the schools to. Conversely, if you were over capacity, we would be doing it per student, because we'd be overstating the level of service, because if we use capacity, because if you were over capacity, you would be, like I said, overstating the level of service. So the bottom of this table shows the level of service standards for K through 8, and we have the same type of table here for high school levels as well. There's also changes to the fee study in terms of land acquisition cost. This slide here shows land acquisition from recent purchases. The price is now almost $68,000 per acre. There's also been changes in the construction cost. They're higher than they were 3 years ago at the elementary and middle school level, or the K through 8. The average cost per square foot is $197.31 as opposed to $176.46 at the 9 through 12 or high school level. There's also a component within the fees for support facilities and buses. This shows the support facilities and the cost per student. And the assumption here is that as growth occurs over the next 10 years, you are going to have to provide additional administrative space, and as well as buses, and here is the level of service for buses and the cost per student. Now, I mentioned credits, and the privilege tax that goes to the schools is used to retire debt. And so we see here on this slide, we have the debt service amortization schedules. On the left-hand side of this slide is the K through 8 debt service, and the right-hand side is the 9 through 12. What we do is we look at those principal and interest payments, and we look also at the projection of students, which is straight-lined past the 4-year projection period in order to get a net credit per student. And in this case, it's $10,023 per K through 8 student, and slightly over $12,000 for the high school level. Now, this table here, again, I apologize, it's a big table, so the numbers may be a little hard to read. But the top part of the table looks at the pupil generation rates by size of housing unit. As you can see, they graduate from 0.194 total students at a house at basically 1,400 square feet or less, all the way up to 0.7 students for the larger housing units. The middle part of the table shows the level of service standards that we just looked through the previous slides. And at the bottom of the table, we can see that there's a total gross cost per K through 8 student at $26,720. To that is applied that credit that we saw on the previous slide of $10,023, and so we have a net capital cost of $16,697 per K through 8 student. Same type of calculation is done at the high school level, where the net cost there is $19,014 per student. Now, this table shows the fees within Williamson County outside of the Franklin Special School District. And we can see here that the fees range from $33.74 for the smallest housing size all the way up to $12,237 for the larger housing units. Now, if we also look at the Franklin Special School District, which again is only paying the 9 through 12 impact fee, that fee ranges from $1,103 for the smallest housing type all the way up to $4,506 for the largest type. And finally, this shows the differences between the current fee and the proposed fee. And within Williamson County, outside of the Franklin Special School District, the fees are going up in all cases from $547 for the smaller house all the way up to $1,027 to the larger. And essentially the same relationship exists within Franklin Special School District, with one exception, that the smallest house is decreasing $42, where there's a slight increase, with the highest increase being at the larger housing size at $761 over the current fee. And this slide summarizes the differences between the 2019 study and the 2016 study. As I mentioned earlier, the student generation rates are slightly lower today than they were in 2016. However, those decreases in pupil generation rates are not enough to offset the two large increases that we have, which is the construction cost, which went up significantly over 2016 for K through 8, $197.31 versus $156.79. And the 9 through 12 construction costs went up as well, from $176 compared to $166 or almost $167 in 2016. Land costs has increased as well, by about $12,000 per acre. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the analysis. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Sturgeon?
Thank you. I had a resident ask me, and I told them my answer, but I wanted to confirm that when a builder builds an apartment complex and there's multiple units with families in it, that they're also paying an impact fee, not
Yes.
just single-family homes?
Yes.
Okay.
All residential, unless it's
All right.
age restricted.
Okay, good. I just wanted confirmation. Thank you.
Commissioner Beathard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation and the work you've put into this. And I believe you've answered my question, but I do want you to touch back on the fact that the numbers are off in terms of the projected numbers of students that were originally believed to be coming to Williamson County over the next 3 years and what we actually saw over the last 3 years. And the newest projection, which is down from the original, but still above what we've been seeing. How do those numbers get formulated, and in particular, the new number, why is it still above the average that we've seen over these last 3 years of growth?
Yeah, I may not be the best person to answer that question because those projections come from the school district themselves, and they have a demographer, and I will say that they've been some of the most accurate projections that we've worked with relative to other clients, but I'm not the one to answer that. They've got a very complex methodology. It looks at cohort survival, has a new growth factor, so I really can't answer that. I will tell you that the growth is significant, and it's not like that the growth rate has declined to a point where we're no longer building schools. And that's really the litmus test that we have to show with the impact fee analysis.
So essentially, if I'm correct, the numbers of students coming in are down, but they're still up enough that we're going to have to build the same number of schools that we would have had to build with the original projection, and the cost of each school based on land acquisition and construction cost has also gone up, and that's the primary reason for the recommendation of the increase in the fee.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Story?
And are we going to have a different opportunity to speak, or is this?
This is not on the resolution. It's just asking him questions about the
Then I'll
methodology.
thank you. I'll hold.
Yeah, we'll come back to the resolution. Okay. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Sturgeon?
Thank you, Chairman. This is another one I think I already know the answer to, but I want the public to hear it. This isn't something that, 5 months from now we can go, oh, wow, we kind of undershot. We need to crank it up some more. We have an opportunity only every 3 years to do this. Is that correct?
Your ordinance states it has to be updated every 3 years. I would argue that if there was some sort of, paradigm shift that one growth just completely shut down or exploded exponentially, that wouldn't preclude you from updating the fee study.
Okay, so we can update it as often as we want to, but we have to do it at least every 3 years.
That's what your ordinance says, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Commissioner Beathard?
I apologize. I've got another question. It pertains to, and my good friend Victor Andrews had trouble with the language as I do. Is it attainable housing? Is it affordable housing? Is it workforce housing? There are a great many of our constituents who have brought that factor up. My original understanding of this impact fee, and one of the reasons I supported it was I believed, and what I'm asking for is clarification here, that those agencies who support that type of housing, whether they be government agencies like Habitat or 501c3 like Hard Bargain, they're exempt, are they not, from having to pay this fee? I see council shaking their head yes.
I can't remember the details of the ordinance, but some communities do exempt within the ordinance itself. Yeah. And the other thing I just point out is one of the reasons it was chosen 3 years ago to go with the size-based impact fee versus typically a single family versus multifamily is that proponents believe, and I happen to be one of those, that the size-based housing fee does promote housing equity and affordability versus a one-size-fits-all, and the proportionality is better as well.
So the builder does have an incentive to create a housing perhaps that has a smaller footprint via the fact that the fee would be smaller for said house.
Well, that depends on the market demand.
Sure. But I do have clarification from council that those entities who work
they're
towards
exempt
affordable
from-
housing, attainable housing, give it whatever definition, those agencies are exempt from having to pay
If
this
they're
fee.
a 501c3, they are exempt, correct.
Or the government agencies that
Correct.
exist that also do that sort of work. Okay, thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes, just two things. One, can you go back to the slide that shows the old rates versus the new rates or the new proposed rates?
Sure.
And then second, in the process of updating the numbers and with the proposal, what was in 2016, what was the growth, I guess, rate you could say that was being used at that time? And then what has actually, and where are we at today?
Good question. If I recall, I want to say that in 2016, the growth rate was, you're talking about the enrollment projection. I want to say it was slightly over 6, and it's 3-something now.
I'm good, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you let them know that I'll email this presentation?
Mr. Chairman, that completes everything that I had to get on the program tonight. I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Just as an announcement, this presentation that we just saw is going to be emailed to all of the commissioners, so. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the mayor? All right. Next, we have schools. Mr. Director Golden, how are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to let you all know that the business of the schools is going well. Today actually happens to be day one of our second quarter instructionally. Dr. David Snowden of Franklin Special and I both presented to the Chamber, Williamson, Inc., last month regarding how we did last year. I do want to point out to you that the school system was named an exemplary school district based on the state standards, which is the top designation. We had 28 schools named reward schools, which is again the state's top designation for schools and a record for us. And we actually had one school named a National Blue Ribbon School, Crockett Elementary. So we're very excited about that. That's following a long line of many of our schools over the years have been named National Blue Ribbon Schools. So we're very excited about that designation by the United States government. We continue to grow, and you heard Mr. Bice's presentation about growth. I do want to point out to you that we publish our 5-year projections on our website. We also have a document there that has our history of growth for the past 15 years or so. I actually think it dates back to maybe 2001 on our website, so you can see our projections. We work on those annually. April of 2019 was the last time we've published that. Likewise, we publish our 5-year capital plan. The board votes on that in November of every year, and then you all see that in January traditionally. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. The growth for us includes some construction projects that are going on right now. Grassland Middle just had their ribbon cutting, and you all know that that's been a long-standing project of the county commission to add theaters, performing arts centers to our middle schools. We have one more to go, and thank you for funding of that. That's at Sunset. They're working on the documents right now for the construction. The Central East Middle School, which has not yet been named, on Henpeck Lane is going well. It's scheduled to open in August of this coming year. Whenever we set the ribbon cutting date, we'll let you know. Creekside Elementary is scheduled to finish right at the end of this calendar year, so that the Creekside Elementary students currently on the Oakview Elementary campus will move there over the winter break. Independence High School is finishing up an expansion, and that's scheduled to open in January as well. We're working on another phase of the Page Middle improvement and expansion, and Page High as well. Those schools are projected to have capacities when they're finished of 1,500 and 2,000 respectively. If you think about the capacity of a middle school with 3 grade levels and a high school with 4, our hope is that we can have a good clean feeder pattern with a 1,500 student middle school up to a 2,000 student high school at the Page schools. So I felt like it was important to let you know about our ongoing projects, and thank you for that. And thank you for funding these this growth for the schools. We have the easy part. We build it once you all fund it, and then we serve the students, and these decisions for you are difficult, and I do respect and appreciate the work you're doing. That's my report.
Commissioner Jones? Dwight Jones?
Jason, can you send us the snapshot sheet of the enrollment numbers?
I sure can. I can
You
actually.
might be having the wrong email me. I know I ask you all the time, and I
Okay.
never get it, so.
Yeah, I believe we did, but to your point, I can tell you right now, the end of the first month, day 20, our enrollment was 40,491, and that includes the early childhood and pre-K programs as well, and that is the number we use for our internal budgeting purposes at the end of the first month.
The snapshot per school.
Per school, gotcha.
Y'all do, I think y'all do
Gotcha.
it, y'all do it a lot.
Yeah, sure. I'll
I don't read it
forward
every
to
time,
you
but-
all the most recent one.
Yeah.
We do it typically on a weekly basis, so I'll forward that to you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jason. Oops. Oh, use your button so we can see. Okay. Commissioner Sturgeon?
Thank you. The theater for Sunset, what's the timing on that?
Right now, the architects are working on the drawings. Our hope is that once construction starts, it should be about a 9-month or so construction schedule. We have not structured or scheduled those theaters to open necessarily on day one. We try to have them open as soon as they possibly can without that schedule. So at the moment, I can't give you an exact date because of the fire marshal review, but I'm estimating about 12 months from now.
So by next Christmas, perhaps?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next, we have the Williamson Medical Center report. I believe we have Julie and Paul here with us. So-
Good evening, Julie Miller, Chief Operating Officer, and with me is Paul Bolin, Chief Financial Officer. And in addition to the financials in your packet, I just wanted to make note that we put a few one-page kind of statistics at your each of your chairs that shows some community impact, technology, some of our recognized patient safety and quality scores, and a few volume numbers for you for fiscal year 2019, which shows surgical cases a little over 13,000. We had 48,500 emergency room visits, that's adult and pediatric, and we treated a little over 159,000 patients last year. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Give the report. All right, I believe that concludes reports of county offices. Next, we have elections and appointments. We have our committees, steering committee recommendations. These will need to be voted on separately. It will take a motion and a second for each committee. Who was the chair of the steering committee? That was
Commissioner Hudson. Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Okay, all right. So I will read the committee, and if you as chair would make the motion, we will get a second and get these on the floor. First is the investment committee. We have Dwight Jones, Beth Lothers, Jerry Rainey, Karen Paris, and Rogers Anderson.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve the committee.
Commissioner Ricky Jones, the second. We need to, are these on the board? Do we need to vote these? All right, these are voted. So if you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Oops. Record the vote, please. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time, but record the vote.
20 yes, 0 no.
Committee passes. Next is the Audit Committee. We have Dwight Jones, Commissioner Greg Lawrence, and Commissioner Steve Smith.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve the audit committee.
Commissioner Ricky Jones II. You're, when they get it loaded.
It's ready.
Okay, there it is. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Law Enforcement Public Safety Committee, we have Commissioner Sean Aiello, Commissioner Robbie Beal, Dwight Jones, Beth Lothers, Jennifer Mason, Steve Smith, and Matt Williams.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the Law Enforcement Public Safety Committee.
All right, Commissioner Ricky Jones, the second. Chad, you have, no. All right. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Committee passes. Property Committee, we have Commissioners Bert Chalfant, Betsy Hester, Ricky Jones, Jennifer Mason, Jerry Rainey, Steve Smith, and Chad Story.
Chairman, I recommend a motion to approve the Property Committee.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Education Committee, we have Commissioners Robbie Beal, Brian Bethard, Betsy Hester, Keith Hudson, Chad Story, Tom Tunnicliffe, Matt Williams.
Chairman, I recommend a motion to approve the Education Committee.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. If you are in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Ricky? Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Tax Study Committee, Commissioners Sean Aiello, Dana Osbrook, Ricky Jones, David Landrum, Greg Lawrence, Aaron Nations, Tom Tunnicliffe.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the Tax Study Committee.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Committee passes. Public Health Committee, Commissioners Dana Osbrook, Brian Bethard, Bert Chalfant, Keith Hudson, Greg Lawrence, Aaron Nations, Jerry Rainey.
Chairman, I recommend a motion to approve the Public Health Committee.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. If you're in favor, press your yes button. If opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Okay. All right, that has our committee assignments. Next, we have the consent agenda. I believe the only thing that is on the consent agenda are the notaries. So we enter. All right, we have Commissioner Dwight Jones, the motion, Commissioner Steve Smith, the second. If you're in favor of your consent agenda, let me get it loaded. Press your yes button. If you're opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Okay. All right. Next, we'll have moving up on the agenda of Resolution 10-19-1. The resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners to amend and implement the education impact fee rate and education impact schedule pursuant to the authority granted by the provisions in accordance with Chapter 120 of the Private Act of 1987, and to be addressed and collected in the manner as defined in the previously adopted Resolution 11-16-6 related to the findings and the acceptance of the Education Facility Impact Fee Study dated September 20th, 2019, concerning residential development and the need for the new and expanded education facilities. Commissioner Tunnicliffe? Move it.
I'm sorry?
Move for,
Oh, yes, move for approval, I'm sorry.
the Tax Study Committee took no action. Need a second, yes. Commissioner Hudson, the second. Tax Study took no action. Budget Task Force? I'm sorry.
4 yes, 0 no.
The Education Committee?
5 for, 1 against.
And the Budget Committee?
0 against.
Okay, at this time, we will, I don't know if we need any further explanation. So if we have any, we do have amendments that we need to present. That we'll need someone to, the amendments were passed out to your, at each of your desks. It was extensive list of amendments. We need someone to present the amendments and the second.
But do I need to read the whole motion?
Now just move the motion as, the amendments as presented.
Make a motion to accept the amendment to resolution number 1019-1.
Thank you. Commissioner Mason, the second. Are there any questions on the amendments that were passed out? These are mostly to do with dates and... Are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, if you're ready to vote on the amendments, if you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Now we're back to the motion as amended. Do you have any questions on the motion as amended? Commissioner Bethard.
I guess this question is for council. If you could remind me the appeal, when will that be heard next? The appeal that pertains
The
to.
appeal is docketed for November 5th, and it'll be heard November 5th at 12:30, actually at the Vanderbilt School of Law. It's a program they do to take the appeals out into the law schools, but that's where we're hearing that, and I expect a decision probably in the first quarter of next year.
As a follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Being that the appeal is going to be heard next month, I'm inclined to make a motion to defer this until that appeal is heard. Feeling somewhat like it is ill-modest to raise the fee during a time in which the legalese of the fee is in question. And with permission, I make a motion to defer this until after the appeal decision is made.
I think so. I don't know, I don't remember.
I didn't think if you discussed it.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Yeah, we,
On the deferral.
can he,
Discuss it.
Bobby, if he discusses it, can he make the motion to defer? That's the question we have from Roberts. Because I was under the impression that if you discussed it, then you couldn't make the motion to defer.
Right, table and deferring is two different things. He can discuss the deferral, it's not.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed clarification for. All right. So we have a motion to defer. We need a second for that motion.
Second the motion.
All right. Commissioner Beal, the second. Now, we have discussion now on defer. We have several people on the board, but the discussion now will be on the motion to defer. Commissioner Smith, you're next up. Do you want to speak on the motion to defer?
No, sir. Thank you.
Next, we have Commissioner Story. Do you want to speak on the motion to defer?
Yeah, just real quick, if I can. So being that this has been in process for, I guess, the last 3 years, and it's kind of been in the works, and even though I'm new to it, I was unaware of the 3-year audit, but, I mean, this has kind of been something that's been in process for a long time, so I don't know, even withstanding the legal outcome, I'm not sure what deferrings would do, but that'd be my only thought.
Thank you. Next, we have Sean Aiello. Do you want to speak on the deferral?
I will. In my opinion, I think deferral would be a good idea for a few reasons. One, certainly after November 5th and the ruling from the Court of Appeals, the county should have a clearer standing, as well as the commissioners here, what a higher court thinks about this potential fee. Should also allow some additional time for discussion and input from concerned citizens and organizations. From that appeals process, and correct me if I'm wrong, any appeal to the Supreme Court is going to have to be by permission of the Supreme Court. So we will know after the Court of Appeals opinion whether that's even going to be attempted to be appealed to the Supreme Court. And even if it is, the Supreme Court could refuse to hear it. So we should have a clearer picture not only after the Court of Appeals ruling, but determining whether or not the Supreme Court is going to take it up. So I think it's an excellent idea brought forth by Commissioner Beathard.
Next, we have Commissioner Mason on
Thank
the
you.
deferral.
Yes. So my experience with dealing with the appellate court is that even if arguments are heard the 1st of November, they then have a time period in which to issue a ruling, which could be up to 6 months. So the fact that we're having the hearing in November doesn't mean we're going to have a decision in November. And so if we table this with the expectation, knowing by our November meeting how the court's going to rule, that, in my opinion, is unrealistic. That's a issue or a ruling that'll be put down sometime next year. So I just want to make everybody aware of how the Court of Appeals works. So it's not an instantaneous decision that day. It'll be a months in the process decision.
Next, we have Commissioner Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question for council. So just to clarify the question about the 3 years timeline, and could we come back if we got the final decision 6 months from now, 8 months from now? Could we come back and vote on this at that time, or do we have to wait till the next 3-year period?
I think that it would put into jeopardy whether or not you have complied with the resolution which requires your action every 3 years.
So the answer is no.
You would not be in compliance with the resolution, in my opinion.
All right, thank you.
Next is Commissioner Williams on the deferral.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Beathard brought up a fair point. It's definitely worth a discussion because we obviously don't want to put our case in court in any type of risk. But I would actually refer to, it's a question to council, is, I mean, in your opinion, if a decision's made on this tonight, could that potentially have any impact on that appeal that's currently in court?
No. Your acting on this tonight will not impact this. This deferring it would put at risk the continued collection post appeal, though, depending on how a court would look at your compliance with the resolution to reevaluate the establishment of those rates every 3 years. So I think you have a much higher risk of judicial interference for the next 3 years by deferring action now.
So just to clarify, in your opinion, by deferring it tonight may create more issues for us than opposed to just acting on it tonight?
I absolutely think it does, and that's one of the reasons we've tried to get that in here before the November 3-year period, which is when you adopted it initially.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I changed my mind.
I wouldn't have one I couldn't change.
I appreciate Commissioner Beathard's motion for deferral. I wanted to make a point and perhaps rely on council as well. This update process, which I appreciate, follows the same process, if you will, that the original ordinance laid out. And the lawsuit that was filed has nothing to do with the process that was followed or the amounts that were arrived at, does not question the methodology. And I would ask council, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to discuss the points of the lawsuit as it applies to this ordinance.
Again, the lawsuit, first of all, addresses the question of whether there is a nexus between the fee and the growth, and that will be decided by the Court of Appeals. But importantly, your process has another process, an appeal process for the individual builder if they believe they have a right under vested rights, or in the argument they're making at the Court of Appeals, they can pay under protest and they can preserve those rights to those amounts by doing so. We haven't spent those monies, we've segregated those, and so they've got the right to protect those numbers even going forward while the appeal is heard. I agree with Commissioner Aiello that we can expect the Supreme Court to make a determination on any writ of certiorari or permission to appeal to them relatively quickly after the Court of Appeal Act, but it does not impact on the ability of builders to pay under protest in the interim and preserve those rights.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in terms of the process and the methodology followed by the ordinance and the amounts that were arrived at through that methodology, the lawsuit really has no question on those issues.
Yeah,
the question has to do with distribution within the districts or within the school district.
There is some element of that as to whether or not the way that we're doing it between the FSSD and non-FSSD is sufficiently tied to the impact, whether it's close enough to the impact that's actually created. The trial court found that it was. And of course, what you're doing here is you're evaluating the rates. You're not addressing the underlying question of vested rights or changing your position on that or on the nexus or on the zones in which they are imposed. So you're not changing any of the variables that are in front of the court. You're changing the dollar amounts that are being charged in the zones that were already established with the nexus that was already established in the resolution 3 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I probably made that clear as mud, but.
Commissioner Sturgeon.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, what I just gleaned from that conversation is that the lawsuit and this action of revising our rates are really unrelated, and I don't see any positive benefit to delaying our action tonight. So I would support moving ahead with the resolution and not deferring. Thank you.
There's no, all right. Commissioner Aiello.
If I understand the concern that was raised by council with respect to deferral on this motion, we have not looked at this statute or this rule within the past 3 years, correct?
Correct.
And the concern is if we don't look at it now, we are not following through on the actual language of what's required of us under that rule. Is that correct?
The technical requirements, correct.
Would it comply with that rule if we were to downvote this tonight and then take it up at a time that's not 3 years later, but more of a permissive taking up, say in a few months after the appeal has been addressed?
I would be hard-pressed as to give you a hard opinion as to what court would say if they would look at that question. Would you technically be in compliance if you did not complete the reevaluation within that period of time? Or would voting down the resolution be reestablishment of the existing rate? You just simply have not changed it. Those are questions we haven't researched, so I can't give you a hard answer. I would think that if there was a vote on the resolution itself and you voted down the change in amounts, you would be effectively reestablishing the existing rates, and I think that's arguably defensible. But I haven't researched that, quite honestly.
So 2 follow-up questions to that. One would be, is my understanding correct that we are allowed to take it up sooner than the next 3 years? Is that?
There are criteria for jumping out of that 3-year window, and I think you would have to have such a deviation from the expected growth and or cost that it would justify changing the time frame. I don't think you can do it in a discretionary manner without a reason to change the time frame based on my recollection of the enabling statute. So I think there is if you had a population growth that far exceeded your expectation, went out 1 or 2 standard deviations from what the projected growth was, we could come in and establish the fact that the growth was significantly different and therefore change the timing. I don't think that just because we want to take additional time is sufficient to say we're going to change the 3-year timing. Again, that's off the top of my head without doing any case law research on it, but that's the way I would interpret the enabling statute.
And so my final question on this, when is our 3-year mark?
I believe it's November.
Would it be possible to defer this to that November meeting to address those 2 issues?
I think we would still be within the 3 years.
Is it possible to, or does it, can I motion to amend the motion to postpone?
The motion to defer needed a definitive time, or it is in effect a motion to table. So you can't defer indefinitely without
Certainly.
making a motion to table. So it needed a time frame for deferral. So if you were to amend the motion to defer to make it to November and you got a second for that, that could certainly be voted on.
I would suggest that that is the time frame suggested by Commissioner Beathard.
And I will second that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I can't.
He had to defer until after the Court of Appeals.
No.
So when is the Court of Appeals date?
Well, yeah, I think your initial motion was until after the Court of Appeals, so he's amending the motion to defer, is what he's saying. So you'd have to,
When is the Court of Appeals date?
the Court of Appeals argument is November 5th. There will not be a decision.
then, yes, okay.
I agree, probably up to 6 months later, but I would say the first quarter is at least the earliest we would get it.
So the new motion is,
All right, he's made, you're making a motion to
I
hear
think
it.
technically we have to vote on the amendment to the deferral to make it, instead of after the Court of Appeals, to make it to November. I think that's the first vote that has to happen. Then you would vote on the motion to defer to November.
Let's confuse it even further.
Okay.
Could not Commissioner Method, as the maker of the motion, do a friendly amendment to add the date of
Yes.
November, and then whoever seconded accepts the friendly amendment, we don't have to vote on it again?
Correct.
Yeah, and I don't recall putting a specific date on it, so if allowed, I would like to put the specific date of our next commission meeting.
I think Robbie Beal
Deferring it to
seconded.
that Tuesday of our next meeting.
All right, and Commissioner Beal, do you accept that amendment?
So I'll maintain my second.
Okay, so now we have that amended, so that the motion to defer is to defer till our November meeting. Is there any other all right, we have Commissioner Tunnicliffe.
Am I there? There I am. My question is, what are we gaining by waiting till November? I see no gain here. We're not going to have a decision. Nothing's changed. So I guess I can open that up to my cohorts up here. What is the benefit of waiting till November meeting to make this vote, take this vote?
Commissioner Beathard.
Did he ask for me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's twofold, and in this case, I believe postponing it to our November meeting eliminates any possible concerns that council had that we might be getting outside of our due diligence pertaining to the 3-year scope and sequence of this original resolution. So the second one then gives us an opportunity to get some of the questions answered that my counterpart, Commissioner Iola, has asked, as well as give the community another opportunity to hear this, to vet on it, to email and discuss with us. Some of my constituents have said this has popped up on them rather quickly. I think to turn Commissioner Tunnicliffe's question around, what harm is there in delaying it 1 month to allow some of our constituents the opportunity to vet this out more fully?
Any other questions on the deferral? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor of the deferral till our November meeting, all right. press your yes button. If you are opposed to the deferral, press your no button. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
6 yes, 14 no.
All right, the deferral fails. Now back to the amended motion for the impact fee. Is there any discussion on the amended motion? Commissioner Smith.
Just in response to some comments that were made earlier about looking at more broad-based support for the cost of construction of the schools. 3-4 years ago, when we were taking a look at this ordinance and analyzing it, we also went through, if you recall, quite a bit of discussion about various options for finding funds for school construction cost. And we knew what the projections looked like at that time as far as what facilities were needed, what the cost was going to be over a period of time. And we took other measures in addition to this over the past several years to improve our financing position. And as Commissioner Lawrence pointed out tonight, our debt situation continues to grow. So I think a number of different options have been analyzed over the last few years internally among commissioners, from the staff, in terms of financing and revenue streams to help us through this period of constructing schools. So this was not a snap decision. It was something that was studied very carefully and is one piece of the puzzle that we had to try and put together at that time. So I feel like we need to support this. The other point I will make is my experience in the city of Franklin with road impact fees. When those were established, there was not an automatic review period specified in that ordinance. I appreciate the foresight of that being done in this ordinance, because we found ourselves 10 years later not having taken a look at the road impact fee ordinance in the city. And all of a sudden, the construction cost had grown so great that that the catch-up was very painful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Story?
A couple of numbers I just wanted to go over. Today, we're roughly spending around $10,000 per student to educate. That's increased over year. The average cost of tax bill of a $300,000 house is about $1,700. $600,000 house is about $3,400. The average cost from the county to educate a child is around $6,000, and the state kicks in about $3,500. So the point being is, all of these dollars here are paid from the broad-based taxes that's coming throughout the county. So the entire county is paying for the increase in the education of every child that's coming through. When you build a new house, you're building opportunity for additional kids to come take part in our school system. And because we're having to pay more out of pocket from our broad-based tax base, every child that comes in kind of expands that deficit in terms of how much we have to pay. So I think aligning where the construction cost of building a new school, which, by the way, costs anywhere between $40 million to $90 million, which adds exponentially every time we have a bond issue. Every time that we add bricks and mortars for the schools, we're also adding 60 to 110 administrative staff per school. That is also being covered by the broad base tax, the tax base. So the only thing we're asking for is, when a school has to be built to service the increased population of an area, what the new construction's doing is basically helping offset some of that some of the brick and mortar costs. So that's an impact that would not be here if the houses weren't coming. So I guess that's my biggest point is this only helps offset some of the building costs. The entire the tax base is paying for the education of everyone. So that's my biggest reason why I support this, is because it aligns the cost of the additional schools with the drivers of the for the need for the schools. So thank you.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank all the real estate agents and board members who came out tonight, whether you're for or against this. We appreciate your input tonight. I think all of us were surprised after we passed this impact fee that we got hit with a lawsuit within 6 months, because we had numerous public hearings before the impact fee was passed, and we didn't really hear much, if any, opposition. In fact, I think I actually went and met with the WCAR board after the lawsuit came down, and the Home Builders Board. I met with both of them because it's never good to have an adversarial relationship with any of our community partners. We've always had a great relationship with home builders. I think all of us live in a home built by Williamson County Home Builders, so they provide a very valuable benefit to our county, and I don't think anybody's blaming them for the growth situation. But I think everybody at the table at the time we sat down agreed that there was that we all wished we'd had more dialogue before the impact fee was passed, and that didn't happen. One of the things that I thought, well, one of the problems with is, and I want to, and adding on to what Commissioner Smith said, one of the problems with looking at the various options we had was it's very difficult to find a dedicated source of taxes specifically for school construction in our tax base. We've got obviously the ability to raise property taxes, but only 60% of the money from the property tax goes to the schools, and really only a very small portion of that goes to the biggest problem, which is the Rural Debt Service Fund, which is what we have to, the money that we use to pay for the K-8 schools in the county. So just raising property taxes doesn't necessarily get us where we need to be in helping us raise money for schools. So to find a dedicated source of funding just for capital costs, particularly for the K-8 schools, was very difficult. And this was why we settled on this tax, because it did the job. We also did pass a sales tax increase a couple years ago, and that was by referendum. We voted on it to allow the community to have a referendum, and they voted that in. So they're all in support of the school. The community has spoken and said they support the taxes for the schools. But one of the ideas that I floated that I thought might be a better idea was a transfer tax. And I'd love to sit down and have that discussion with the board again and maybe bring that idea back up, because it seems to me maybe a more fair way to tax the growth, because we've got a lot of areas. Brentwood is a great example where we upgrade Scales Elementary, and Kenrose Elementary was busting at the seams, so we had to build a new school in Brentwood. And that's an area where you're not seeing a lot of home building growth because they don't have a lot of available land left to build homes. But there's a lot of older people moving out and younger people moving in Brentwood, so they're bringing their kids, and that generates no educational impact fees. So a transfer tax would seem to be more maybe a broader based transfer. It would be broader based and maybe more effective than this. But this is what we have right now. And that would require state law in order for us to change that, and that may be very difficult to do. So that's why we are where we are with this tax, and that's why I'm going to support it tonight. Again, I'd love to have dialogue about other ideas, but we're really in a quandary here on how to fund schools. You know, you heard the numbers tonight. We're going to be over $860 million in debt by the end of the year, and that's basically all schools. So it's a really tough position we're in here to try to come up with the money. And unfortunately, the tax taxation seems to fall on your industry. And that's a decision that was made a long time ago before any of us were born. So that's just the nature of the tax base that we have today. And I'm going to support this tonight, but I do thank you all for coming out, and I would love to have continued dialogue about other options that we might be able to discuss.
Commissioner Ricky Jones?
Just quickly, we mentioned several broad-based taxes earlier, and one of them you mentioned was the wheel tax. I'm an old timer. We tried that 13, 14 years ago, and we got shot down pretty quick. So that one is not going to be one. So we are really only left with a few things, and one of them is property taxes. And so we tried the wheel tax before, and I just thought I'd throw that out, that it will not go in this county.
Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, it's simple. We have revenues and we have debt. Being a conservative county, we keep our property taxes low, which we just raised 7 pennies back in July. We're about to issue $143 million of debt tonight. All right, we're asking everybody to pay their share. All right, and so it's a easy, I just calculated one of the brackets. It was a 9% increase when we're looking at lower 20s, 22, 24% increase on the construction cost of new capital needs for schools. Y'all, this is a no-brainer. We need to pass this.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor of the motion as amended, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone? Whoops, Commissioner Herbert. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
19 yes, 1 no.
Resolution passes. Yeah, I've gotten out of order, so I gotta get my agenda. Yeah, but I don't know where that one goes. Resolution 10-19-2. Resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $56,950,000 of county district school bonds of Williamson County, Tennessee, providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of debt service on the bonds, and allocating educational impact fee collections to defray public improvement expense. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Herbert, the second. Budget Committee,
5-4-0 against.
explanation, please.
As you can see, this is a new bond issuance, $56,950,000 to go for district school bonds, K through 8 school facilities.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you are in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-3. Resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $86 million of general obligation public improvement and school bonds of Williamson County, Tennessee, providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of the debt service on the bonds, and allocating education impact fee collections to defray the public improvement expense. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
These are general obligation bonds that not only will include high schools in the county, but also other facilities, including animal control, jail facilities, parks, etc.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you are in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution 10-19-5, resolution appropriating and amending the 2019-2020 library budget by $56,382.16. Revenues to come from donations, contributions, and fines. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones II. Library Board?
8-4-0 against.
Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
As you can see, these are typical fines, donations from the city of Franklin, and other revenues which will be used to primarily upgrade the computer facilities at the library, including software.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Commissioner Rainey? Okay. All right, anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-7, resolution appropriating and amending the 2019-2020 county clerk's budget by $10,000, revenues to come from reserve account. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones II. Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
As you can see, it's $10,000 for various equipment supplies, including a new renewal kiosk coming from reserve funds.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Commissioner, anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-8. Excuse me. Resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to sign the Access and Visitation Grant Contract with the State of Tennessee Administrative Office of the Courts and amend the 2019-20 juvenile court budget by $2,400. Revenues to come from state grant funds. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
The second was Commissioner Jones. Explanation, please.
This is a state grant to assist with the medication and supervised visitation for families in civil cases in juvenile court. As you can see, this is primarily for low-income and indigent individuals.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-9, resolution appropriating and amending the 2019-20 Clerk and Master's Chancery Court budget by $9,250. Revenues to come from reserve account. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones II. Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
The explanation, please.
As you can see, this is money collected from data entry fees, which can be allocated for technology, and this will be used by the clerk and master for office computers and software upgrades.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Mason?
I just wanted to point out a typo error on the second whereas these funds are written twice. It just needs to be cleaned up. It's just a typographical error. Do we need to do that by amendment, or can that be done?
No, it can be correct.
Clerical. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Commissioner Sturgeon? Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-10, resolution appropriating and amending the 2019-20 General Sessions Veteran Courts budget by $24,165. Revenues to come from veteran court reserves. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones II, Budget Committee.
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
As you can see, the Veterans Court has a $55 fee, which they assess any person found in violation of the Tennessee Drug Control Act, and this will be reserved for their other contracted services for the operation of the Veterans Court.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-11. Resolution amending the 2019-20 General Sessions Veteran Courts budget by $34,435.19, revenues to come from federal through state grant funds. Commissioner Webb?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Herbert II, Budget Committee.
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
As you can see, this is a grant from the federal government through the state for the operation of this department.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-4. Resolution to request designation of Williamson County, Tennessee as a broadband-ready community. Commissioner Webb? Highway, second was Commissioner Dwight Jones. Highway Commission was 5-4-0 against. Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
This is where the Williamson County will work to be broadband ready, and what a lot of this reason it went to the Highway Commission is because some of this will be using the right-of-way. If you'll see down there under the now, you'll have the different items that have to be categorized. If there are any questions, Mr. Chair, I believe the mayor is here and can answer those questions.
Commissioner Lawrence?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I guess, Mayor, you may be elected to answer this, but we've got sections of the county that are rural and they don't have broadband. So does this mean we're going to run lines out there to everybody, or which ones are we going to be selective, or which ones are we going to select?
So let me take your last question first. No, it's not going to be everyone, I'm sure, overnight. The state of Tennessee has come out with a program whereby if your county becomes broadband ready, that's the term they've used, then you can eliminate some of the processes that you would normally have to go through. In our county specifically, many of you remember a little over a year ago, Middle Tennessee Electric and United Cable Company came together. And so they are making strides to get some grant fund money from the state of Tennessee. When we looked at this at the Highway Commission, we're not doing away with any of the maintenance agreements and the agreements that normally the Highway Commission and Eddie Hood have to look at. It's just a process where you can get it in and get it out in about 30 days. They still if they get in the right of way, there's still things they have to do, but it's just a process to get it through a little quicker. And the state says if you're ready to do that, we're willing to help you. You can get in line for some of this money.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Commissioner Williams? Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
19 yes, 0 no, 1 out.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-6. Resolution amending the rules and regulations and procedures of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners to amend the rule concerning the date and time of the Board of Commissioner January meeting. Commissioner Herbert?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Dwight Jones, second. Rules Committee?
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
This is to change the date and time of where we originally changed it in January for the football game. So it's changing it back to the Monday night.
Are there any questions?
Request to speak.
Yeah, Commissioner Jones.
I've already checked. Now, there will be a football championship game that Monday night, so I just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
17 yes, 3 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-12. Resolution to reduce the speed limit along McCandless Road and Sanford Road in Williamson County. Commissioner Webb? Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. Highway Commission was 5-4-0 against. Budget Committee?
5-4-0 against.
And explanation, please.
This is a friendly amendment brought forth by some of the residents located out in the Nolensville area, especially on McCandless, the horseshoe shape where it becomes Sanford, where it intersects with Nolensville Road. And this is, since it's being supported by both Commissioner Little and Commissioner Lathers in response to requests from the residents.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. Anyone wish to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10-19-13. Resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to execute an agreement concerning the maintenance of a planned pedestrian underpass to be located under State Route 96. Commissioner Webb? Commissioner Dwight Jones, the second. Highway Commission was 5-4-0 against. Parks and Recreation? Did they hear it?
Parks and Rec now.
She's absent. Do we know what the number was?
All right, all right.
Yes. Do you know what the vote was? I can't.
4-0.
4-0. The Parks and Rec was 4-4-0 against, and Budget Committee.
5-4-0 against.
Explanation, please.
This is the Tennessee Department of Transportation is going to widen State Route 96, and they've offered to build a pedestrian underpass underneath 96, and the requirement here is that we will agree to maintain that. And so if anyone has any questions, I believe Gordon is still here. Yes, he is.
Commissioner Mason?
Thank you. Obviously, I'm all for private developers paying for pedestrian underpasses. My question is, I just want to make sure that there is no expectation of the county that we in return will do something. I just find it, I guess I don't understand the motivation. Why are they agreeing to pay for this, and do they have expectations from the county down the road for any type of future project?
Yes, Commissioner, this is pretty typical. When these underpasses are designed and built, they're built for connectivity to greenways. This one in particular is going to be close to Trinity Elementary School, so it will enable children to safely get under the road and be able to get to school. And, you know, and our maintenance on that is pretty minimal. You might have to do a resurface, you know, once every, 7 to 10 years, something like that.
And again, I'm all for it. I just want to make sure there is no expectation on the county's end for any type of return favor or anything of that nature.
So the request came from TDOT. And TDOT does not want to do a maintenance agreement with a private firm individual. I get that. And because we're the only entity out there, at some day, I suspect, Franklin will annex out towards the triune community where this will go on. It's our intent that, as we have seen development, as you said, it's a good thing to do that connects two sides of the road. But TDOT preferred us to be the individual of the maintenance agreement. So I can't speak to any future development. It is the requirement they have, because they own tracts of land on both sides of the road.
Anything? Okay. Commissioner Story?
I was, this is right next to Trinity Elementary, and it's a large farm at the moment. And so effectively, it was attempted to be developed about a year ago, and the city declined it because of the lack of sewer. So at some point, it will be developed, but as we were saying, it being that the developer or the owner owns both sides, it's a good opportunity. My biggest fear was, are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, and what potentially may happen down the road? But this is the only time you'll ever get to do it while the project's happening, so it's actually a good opportunity.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. If you're in favor, press your yes button. Opposed, your no. She's out. All right, Commissioner Sturgeon is out. There, okay. Anyone wishing to change your vote, do so at this time. Record the vote, please.
19 yes, 0 no, 1 out.
Resolution passes. I believe that concludes our agenda. One last reminder that our next meeting will be on Tuesday, November 12th, not on the Monday, but on Tuesday, November 12th. Yes, Commissioner Dwight Jones.
Jason, I just want to publicly thank you for that speedy response on that email. I knew if I called you out in public, you'd be right on it. Thank you.
We are adjourned.